The CEO's daughter-in-law stood in my office doorway with 2 security guards, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against a manila folder. "We know you've been spending company money on training courses," Stephanie snapped. "You're terminated effective immediately." I handed her my badge and laptop, my hands surprisingly steady. "You have 5 minutes before your main job stops running. Tell your father-in-law I said good luck." Her laugh was sharp and cruel. "Good luck? Sweetie, you're the one who needs it." 2 hours later, my phone started ringing. I walked out of Cortex Solutions at 11:30 on a Thursday morning, carrying only my purse. The autumn sun felt too bright, the parking lot too quiet. My legs moved on autopilot as I found my car, a 10-year-old Honda Civic that had seen better days. I sat in the driver's seat for a solid 5 minutes before I could even turn the key. 7 years. I had given Cortex Solutions 7 years of my life. I had built their entire automated operations infrastructure from the ground up. When I started, they were processing orders manually, tracking inventory on spreadsheets, and losing clients left and right because of errors and delays. I changed everything. I designed systems that ran like clockwork, processing thousands of transactions every single hour without a single human hand touching them. And now Stephanie, who had been at the company for exactly 6 months, had just accused me of embezzlement. I drove home in a daze, replaying the confrontation in my mind. Stephanie had burst into my office without knocking, those 2 security guards flanking her like she was some kind of corporate executioner. She had thrown the manila folder onto my desk, and I had seen the invoices inside, my training courses, cybersecurity certifications, advanced systems administration, cloud infrastructure management. Every single one of them approved by Gerald, my supervisor, before he retired 8 months ago. $12,000, Stephanie had said, her voice dripping with accusation. $12,000 of company money spent on your little classes. Gerald never approved these. We checked. I had tried to explain. I had pulled up my emails, shown her Gerald's written approvals, explained that these certifications were not only legitimate but necessary for someone managing critical infrastructure. She had not even looked at the screen. "Gerald doesn't work here anymore," she had said. "And we have no record of these approvals. You forged them. You're a thief, Rosa. And if you make any trouble, we will press criminal charges. Do you understand me?" I understood plenty. I understood that Stephanie had married Brandon, the CEO's son, 6 months ago, and immediately gotten herself appointed as Director of Operations Efficiency, despite having a degree in marketing and exactly 0 technical knowledge. I understood that she had been targeting me for months, questioning every expense, every decision, every line of code. I understood that she saw me as an obstacle to her grand plan of cutting costs and making herself look good to her father-in-law, Robert, the CEO. What Stephanie did not understand was how Cortec actually worked. I made it home to my small apartment and collapsed onto my couch. My phone sat silent on the coffee table. I stared at it, feeling hollow. Then I started updating my resume, my hands shaking as I typed. What was I supposed to put? Fired for theft? Accused of embezzlement? My career was over. My phone buzzed. I almost ignored it, but I saw the name Marcus. He was one of the customer service representatives at Cortec, a good guy who had always treated me with respect. "Rosa," he said when I answered, and his voice was panicked. "Rosa, everything is falling apart. Customer orders aren't processing. The inventory system is frozen. None of the automated reports are generating. What's happening?" My stomach dropped. I had known this would happen, but hearing it confirmed made it real. "Marcus," I said carefully, "I set up the entire automation stack to require my authentication every 6 hours. It's a security measure. Without my access credentials being properly transferred to someone else, the system is shutting down piece by piece. Can you come back? Can you fix it?" He sounded desperate. "No." My voice was firmer than I expected. Stephanie accused me of theft. She threatened me with criminal charges. If I touch those systems now, I could face legal liability. I can't risk it. "But Rosa, this is bad. Shipping labels aren't printing. Vendor payments aren't processing. Client dashboards are going dark. Nobody here knows how to fix any of this. The IT department is freaking out." The IT department. 3 junior technicians who knew how to reset passwords and replace keyboards. I had trained them on basic maintenance, but they had no idea how my custom systems actually functioned. I had built everything myself, layer upon layer of interconnected automation that I had lovingly crafted over 7 years. I'm sorry, Marcus. I really am. But I can't help. I felt genuine concern for the clients who would suffer from this outage. Cortec managed logistics and supply chain platforms for 300 corporate clients. Those clients depended on real-time data, automated order processing, and instant reporting. Without those systems, they were dead in the water. People are panicking, Marcus said. I've got clients screaming at me about delayed shipments and missing orders. What do I tell them? Tell them to contact management, I said quietly. This isn't your fault, Marcus. It isn't mine either. After we hung up, I texted my sister Diana. Got fired today. Long story. Can I call you later? She responded immediately with a heart emoji, and call me now. But I could not talk yet. I sat there on my couch, watching my phone light up with call after call from Cortec numbers. I ignored every single one. My hands were still shaking. I felt a mixture of vindication and genuine dread. I knew what was happening there right now. Every automated process I had built was grinding to a halt. Systems were timing out, waiting for authentication that would never come. Error logs were filling up. Alarms were going off that nobody knew how to silence. I had warned them. Not explicitly, but I had told management for years that they needed redundancy, that they needed to cross-train people, that putting all their eggs in one basket was dangerous. They had always said it was too expensive, too complicated, not a priority. Gerald had understood, but he had retired. And now there was nobody left who understood how any of it worked. My phone buzzed again. This time it was an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Rosa Martinez? A woman's voice, clipped and professional. Yes? This is Jennifer from Cortec's IT department. We need you to walk us through the authentication process for the operations systems. I closed my eyes. I was fired this morning and accused of embezzlement. I was threatened with criminal charges. I can't provide any technical support without legal protection. But everything is down. We're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars every hour. Then I suggest you contact whoever made the decision to fire me without a proper handover process. I hung up. My hands would not stop shaking. This was real. This was actually happening. I had built something incredible at Cortec. Something that worked so perfectly that people had forgotten it even existed. And now they were learning exactly how much they had depended on me. My phone rang again. I turned it off. 3 hours after being fired, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Brandon, the CEO's son, and Stephanie's husband. He was sweating despite the cool October weather, his tie loosened, his normally perfect hair disheveled. This was not the polished executive I was used to seeing. I opened the door but left the chain on. What do you want? Rosa, please. His voice cracked. We need you to come back. Right now. Everything is falling apart. Your wife fired me this morning. She accused me of theft and threatened me with criminal charges. Stephanie overreacted. She was wrong. We can work this out. He was practically begging. I unhooked the chain and opened the door fully, crossing my arms. Work what out exactly? Come back. Fix the systems. We'll pay you. Double your salary, triple it. Just name your price. I want a full written apology from Stephanie. I want my job back with a 20% raise. I want a public statement clearing my name of all accusations. And I want all of this in writing, signed by your father and the entire board of directors. Brandon's face went pale. I need to talk to my father. And Stephanie. Then go talk to them. Every hour you wait costs you approximately $200,000 in lost transactions and contract penalties. Your clients have service-level agreements, Brandon. You're violating all of them right now. His expression shifted from desperate to angry. You did this on purpose. You designed the systems to fail without you. That's sabotage, Rosa. That's illegal. I felt ice in my veins. I designed security measures to protect company data. That's my job. Was my job. If you had done a proper handover when you fired me, none of this would be happening. But you had security march me out like a criminal without even letting me write down a single password. You're holding the company hostage. No, Brandon. I'm protecting myself legally. Your wife accused me of a crime. She threatened me. I'm not touching anything until I have protection. He left without another word, nearly running to his expensive silver Mercedes. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. This was escalating so fast. I turned my phone back on. 17 missed calls, 23 text messages. I ignored all of them except one from Diana. Call me. Now. I called her. My sister answered on the first ring. What happened? Diana demanded. I told her everything. The firing, the accusations, the systems failing, Brandon showing up at my door. Diana listened without interrupting, which meant she was furious. My sister was a high school chemistry teacher, and she had a protective streak a mile wide. They can't do this, she said when I finished. This is illegal, wrongful termination, defamation. You need a lawyer. I can't afford a lawyer. I'll help you pay for one. This is insane, Rosa. We talked for another 20 minutes and I felt a little better. At least someone was on my side. After we hung up, I made myself dinner, trying to pretend everything was normal. It was not working. At 8 o'clock that evening, my email pinged. Cortex Legal Department. My stomach clenched as I opened it. The email was formal, threatening, and absolutely terrifying. It demanded I return all company property immediately. It stated that I had deliberately designed systems to fail without my presence, which constituted malicious intent and sabotage. It threatened legal action for damages. It mentioned the word criminal 3 times. I read it twice, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. They were actually doing this. They were trying to make me the villain. An hour later, my phone rang. Unknown number again. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. Is this Rosa Martinez? A man's voice, older, careful. Who is this? My name is David Chen. I'm an attorney representing 3 of Cortex Solutions' largest clients. I understand you were recently terminated from your position there. My mouth went dry. Yes. My clients are planning to file suit against Cortex for breach of contract due to the ongoing service outage. We understand you designed and maintained the systems that have failed. Would you be willing to serve as an expert witness regarding Cortex IT infrastructure and business practices? This was a lifeline. This could help me prove that I had not sabotaged anything, that Cortex failure was their own fault. But it was also dangerous. I need to think about it, I said. I understand. But I should tell you, my clients are very motivated. The outage has cost them millions of dollars so far. They want answers, and they want accountability. Can I call you back tomorrow? Of course. But Miss Martinez, I would encourage you to retain your own legal representation. This situation is going to get complicated. After we hung up, I sat in the dark in my living room, trying to process everything. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You talk to anyone about our systems and we'll bury you. You signed an NDA. Remember that. It had to be from Stephanie. The threatening tone, the reference to the non-disclosure agreement I had signed when I was hired, my hands went cold. I pulled out my employment contract from my file cabinet and read through the NDA section. It was broad, covering basically anything related to company operations, systems, or business practices. If I testified for those clients, was I violating the NDA? Could Cortex sue me for that too? I was still reading when my phone rang again. This time the caller ID said Metro Police Department. My heart stopped. Miss Martinez? A gruff voice. This is Detective Harrison with the Metro Police. Cortex Solutions has filed a formal complaint against you for computer crimes and embezzlement. I need you to come in for an interview tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. I haven't done anything wrong, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. That's what we need to talk about. 9 o'clock. Don't be late. He gave me the address and hung up. I sat there in the dark, my phone in my lap, and realized that this had just become so much worse than losing my job. I was facing potential criminal charges. I called Diana back. She answered immediately. They called the police, I told her. I have to go in for an interview tomorrow morning. Diana swore, which she almost never did. Do not go alone. We're getting you a lawyer tonight. I sat in a police interview room at 9:15 the next morning, Friday, with a public defender named Nancy Reeves, who I had met exactly 35 minutes ago. Nancy looked about 25 years old, exhausted, and completely overwhelmed. She had 7 other cases that day. She had not had time to review my file beyond a quick skim in the hallway. I was trying very hard not to panic. Detective Harrison entered the room, carrying a thick folder. He was in his 50s, with graying hair and a weathered face that suggested he had seen everything. He sat down across from me and opened the folder. "Miss Martinez, let's talk about your employment at Cortex Solutions." For the next hour, he asked me about everything. My access to company systems, my responsibilities, the training courses, the expenses. I explained everything carefully, pulling up documentation on my phone that I had kept in my personal email. I showed him the approval emails from Gerald for each training course. I explained how the systems worked, why they required authentication, why everything had failed after I was fired. Detective Harrison listened, taking notes. He did not seem hostile, but he did not seem friendly either. He was professional, methodical. "Cortex is claiming you embezzled $60,000, he said finally. I blinked. 60,000? The training courses only cost 12,000 total. I have the receipts. He slid several papers across the table. They were invoices, but I had never seen them before. Training courses I had never taken. Certifications I did not have. All with my name on them. "These are fake," I said immediately. "I never authorized these. I've never even heard of these companies. Cortex says you submitted these for reimbursement." "That's a lie. Someone fabricated these." Nancy finally spoke up. "Detective, clearly someone at Cortex has created false evidence to inflate the charges against my client." Detective Harrison looked at her, then back at me. "I'll need to investigate further. Miss Martinez, don't leave town. We'll be in touch." That was it. No arrest, no charges. Just a warning not to leave town. Nancy and I walked out of the police station together. "This is outside my expertise," Nancy admitted. "You need a real employment lawyer. I handle criminal defense, but this has civil components too. I can give you some names. I can't afford a real lawyer." She gave me a sympathetic look. "Then you better find a way. Cortex is coming after you hard." I called Diana from the parking lot, and she picked me up. We drove to a coffee shop, and I finally broke down crying. Everything was falling apart. I was being accused of crimes I did not commit, with fake evidence, and I had no way to fight back. "We'll figure this out," Diana said fiercely, holding my hand across the table. "I'll sell my car if I have to. We're getting you a lawyer." We spent the rest of the morning calling law firms. Most of them wanted retainers I could not afford. $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. We were about to give up when Diana remembered a teacher friend whose brother was a lawyer. His name was Helen Rodriguez, and she practiced employment law. Diana called her friend, explained the situation, and got Helen's number. I called her, not expecting much. "Tell me what happened," Helen said. I told her everything. When I finished, there was a long silence. "They're trying to destroy you," Helen said finally. "This is retaliation, and it's illegal. I'll take your case. I can't afford you. Contingency. If we win, I take a percentage of the settlement. If we lose, you owe me nothing. But we're not going to lose." I felt hope for the first time in days. "Really?" "Really. But we need to move fast. I'll file for an emergency restraining order against Cortex harassment today. Can you meet me tomorrow morning at my office?" "Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much." After I hung up, Diana and I hugged, both of us crying with relief. Maybe this was going to be okay. Maybe I could fight back. I drove home that afternoon feeling lighter. Diana had insisted I stay with her, but I wanted one night in my own apartment. I needed to feel normal, even if just for a few hours. I pulled into my parking spot and saw something on my door, a bright orange notice. My stomach sank as I walked closer and read it. "Eviction notice. 30 days to vacate." I tore it off the door and went inside, my hands shaking. My landlord, Mr. Patterson, lived in the building. I went straight to his apartment and knocked. He answered, looking uncomfortable. "Rosa, I'm sorry." "Why are you evicting me?" My rent is paid. I've never caused any problems. Cortex legal team contacted me. He would not meet my eyes. They said you're facing criminal charges. They said you're a liability. They offered to pay me 3 months' rent if I evicted you immediately. They what? My voice rose. That's illegal. That's harassment. I can't risk my property. I have other tenants to think about. I'm sorry, Rosa. You have 30 days. I went back to my apartment, closed the door, and slid down to the floor. 30 days. I had 30 days to find a new place to live while fighting false criminal charges and a wrongful termination case with no job and no income. I tried to check my email on my phone. No internet. I tried to check on my laptop. No connection. I called my internet provider. Your account has been flagged as fraudulent and suspended, the representative said. Cortex Solutions reported that you obtained service under false pretenses using company information. That's not true. I pay for my own internet. I'm sorry, ma'am. You'll need to resolve this with Cortex before we can restore service. My phone beeped. A text from my cell phone provider. Service would be suspended in 24 hours due to fraudulent account information. Cortex had reported my phone, too, claiming I still had a company phone that I had not returned. I sat there on my floor, surrounded by disconnection notices, an eviction notice, and the weight of everything crashing down. Then I tried to check my bank account balance to see how much money I had for a security deposit on a new apartment. Access denied. I called my bank, already knowing what they would say. Your account has been frozen pending an investigation. Cortex Solutions has reported suspected fraudulent deposits related to stolen funds. How long will the freeze last? Until the investigation is complete. Could be weeks, could be months. I hung up and just sat there. No job, no income, frozen bank accounts, no internet, no phone service by tomorrow, 30 days until I was homeless, and criminal charges hanging over my head. Cortex was not just fighting me. They were systematically destroying every aspect of my life, so I could not fight back. I called Diana from my dying phone. She answered immediately. Rosa? What's wrong? I told her everything. The eviction, the frozen accounts, the disconnected services. My voice broke halfway through, and I started sobbing. I'm coming to get you, Diana said. Pack a bag. You're staying with me, right now. 20 minutes later, my sister pulled up in her aging Toyota. I threw clothes and toiletries into a duffel bag and left my apartment, not knowing if I would ever come back. Diana drove us to her small house on the other side of town, and I collapsed on her couch, emotionally and physically exhausted. This is what they do, Diana said quietly. They isolate you. They take away your resources. They make it impossible for you to fight back. It's working, I whispered. No, it's not. Because you have me. And tomorrow, you have Helen. We're going to fight this. But as I lay there on Diana's couch that night, staring at the ceiling, I had never felt more defeated in my life. Every time I thought I was getting a handle on things, Cortex made it worse. And I had no idea how much worse it could get. Diana woke me up Saturday morning with coffee and a determined expression. We're meeting Helen at 10. Get up. I felt like I had not slept at all, but I dragged myself off the couch and got ready. Diana drove us to Helen Rodriguez's office, a small suite in a professional building downtown. Helen was there waiting, along with another woman I did not recognize. Rosa, this is my paralegal, Tracy, Helen said. We've been reviewing your case since yesterday afternoon. We sat down in her conference room, and I told them everything again, with Diana adding details I forgot. Helen and Tracy took meticulous notes. Okay, Helen said when I finished. Here's what we're dealing with. Cortex is engaging in illegal retaliation. They fired you without cause, fabricated evidence of embezzlement, contacted your landlord to get you evicted, and reported false information to your service providers and bank. This is a coordinated campaign of harassment. Can we stop them? I asked. Yes. I filed for an emergency restraining order yesterday. The hearing is Monday morning. I'm confident we'll get it. That will stop them from contacting third parties about you. She slid a document across the table. This is a letter I'm sending to Cortex legal team today. It puts them on notice that we're documenting everything, and that further harassment will result in additional legal action. What about the criminal charges? I spoke with Detective Harrison this morning. He's a good detective. He's already finding holes in Cortex's story. Those fake invoices are obvious fabrications. The metadata shows they were created days after your termination. The detective knows something is wrong. I felt a tiny bit of hope. So no charges? I can't promise that, but it's looking unlikely. The evidence against you is falling apart under scrutiny. Helen pulled out another document. Now, about the NDA. I've reviewed your employment contract. The non-disclosure agreement doesn't cover illegal activity. If Cortex engaged in wrongdoing, you're allowed to speak about it. That's established law. So I can talk to the clients who want me to testify? Yes. In fact, I've already contacted David Chen, the attorney representing those clients. They're very interested in your testimony. For the first time in days, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could win this. We spent the rest of the morning planning our strategy. Helen was sharp, organized, and confident. She had been practicing employment law for 15 years, and she had seen cases like this before. Tracy, her paralegal, was equally impressive, pulling up case law and precedents faster than I could follow. By the time we left at noon, I felt something I had not felt since Thursday morning. Hope. Diana and I grabbed lunch at a diner near her house. My phone, which was down to its last few hours of service, rang. Unknown number. I almost did not answer, but I did. Miss Martinez? This is Detective Harrison. My appetite vanished. Yes? I wanted to let you know that we've completed our initial investigation. The invoices that Cortex provided appear to be fabricated. The companies listed don't exist, and the document metadata shows they were created after your termination. So no charges? Correct. No criminal charges will be filed. However, I'd advise you to document everything going forward. This situation is messy, and I suspect it's going to get messier. After he hung up, I put my head down on the table and cried. Diana rubbed my back, and I heard her sniffling too. No criminal charges. At least that nightmare was over. Monday morning came fast. Diana drove me to the courthouse for the restraining order hearing. Helen met us there, looking professional and fierce in her dark suit. Cortex lawyers were there too, 3 of them, all men in expensive suits. The hearing lasted 45 minutes. Helen presented evidence of Cortex harassment, the eviction notice, the service disconnections, the frozen bank accounts, the fake invoices. Cortex lawyers argued that they were simply protecting their business interests. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, was not impressed with their arguments. Cortex actions constitute a pattern of harassment and retaliation, she said. The restraining order is granted. Cortex is prohibited from contacting Miss Martinez's landlord, service providers, financial institutions, or any other third parties regarding her employment or termination. Any further contact must go through her legal representation. Violation of this order will result in sanctions. We left the courthouse victorious. Helen's strategy had worked. Within 2 hours, my bank accounts were unfrozen. My internet service was restored. My phone service continued. Mr. Patterson called to apologize and retract the eviction notice. I felt like I could breathe again. But that evening, as I sat on Diana's couch updating my laptop, something felt wrong. My computer was running slowly. Programs were opening on their own. I checked my security software and felt ice flood my veins. Someone had hacked into my laptop. They had accessed my email, my documents, everything. And they had sent emails from my account. I called Helen immediately. She told me to shut down the laptop and bring it to her office first thing in the morning. Then I checked my email from Diana's computer. My heart stopped. There were emails in my sent folder that I had never written. Emails to Cortex clients containing gibberish, false claims, nonsensical accusations. I looked unhinged, unstable. And there was one email sent to Cortex general address that made me feel sick. It was a threat. A graphic, violent threat against Stephanie. I didn't write this, I told Diana, showing her the screen. Someone hacked me and sent this. This is a setup, Diana said immediately. They're trying to make you look dangerous. She was right, and it worked. The next morning, Before I could even get to Helen's office, a process server showed up at Diana's house. Cortec had filed for a restraining order against me, claiming I was threatening employees and harassing the company. The evidence was the threatening email sent from my account. Helen called me an hour later. "We have a hearing this afternoon. The judge granted a temporary restraining order. Rosa, you can't contact anyone at Cortec or come within 500 feet of their building until the hearing." But I didn't send those emails. I was hacked. "I know. We'll prove it. But until then, you have to comply with the order." The hearing that afternoon was a disaster. Cortec's lawyers presented the emails as evidence. They had screenshots, metadata, everything. Helen argued that my computer had been compromised, but we did not have proof yet. The forensic analysis would take days. The judge, a different one this time, looked at the threatening email and granted Cortec's restraining order for 30 days. "Miss Martinez, you are prohibited from contacting any Cortec employee or coming within 500 feet of Cortec's facilities for 30 days. At that time, we'll have another hearing to determine if the order should be extended." I walked out of that courthouse feeling like I had been punched in the stomach. Helen tried to reassure me, saying we would prove the hacking, but I knew what this meant. I could not talk to anyone at Cortec. I could not help the clients who wanted me to testify. I was shut out of my own defense. "This makes it nearly impossible to defend yourself," Helen admitted that evening, sitting in her office with me and Diana. "If we can't prove the hacking quickly, this restraining order gives Cortec a huge advantage." "How long will the forensic analysis take?" I asked. "At least a week, maybe 2. I put my head in my hands. Every time I made progress, Cortec found a way to knock me back down, and I was starting to wonder if I could keep fighting. 2 weeks passed. I stayed with Diana, sleeping on her couch, and trying to put my life back together. It was not going well. The forensic analysis of my laptop confirmed what I already knew. I had been hacked. Someone had installed remote access software and sent those emails from my account. But by the time we had proof, the damage was done. The restraining order was still in effect, and Cortec was using those 2 weeks to shore up their position. I tried to find a job. I applied to dozens of positions, used every connection I had, reached out to former colleagues. I had 3 phone interviews scheduled. All 3 were mysteriously canceled at the last minute. No explanation. Just, "We've decided to move in a different direction." A recruiter I knew from a conference finally called me and gave me the truth. "Rosa, I'm only telling you this because I like you. Cortec is calling everyone. They're telling companies you're unstable, that you threatened employees, that you sabotaged their systems. They're blacklisting you." "That's illegal," I said. "Probably, but it's working. Nobody wants to touch you right now." I hung up and stared at my phone. I could not get a job. My savings were gone. My unemployment claim had been denied because Cortec claimed I was fired for misconduct. My health insurance had been terminated when I was fired, and I had a prescription that cost $300 a month. I could not afford it. Diana was supportive, but I could see the strain. She was a teacher. She did not make much money. Having me living with her indefinitely was a burden, even though she would never say it out loud. Helen was still fighting. She had filed motions, gathered evidence, prepared for trial, but she warned me that my case could take years. Employment law cases moved slowly, and without the client lawsuits to help expose Cortec's misconduct, proving everything would be harder. The clients settled, Helen told me during one of our meetings. Cortec paid them off. Big settlements, confidentiality agreements. They're not going to testify. So we're on our own. Yes, I felt like I was drowning. Every day was a struggle just to get out of bed. I started having panic attacks. Nightmares about police showing up to arrest me, about being homeless, about everything falling apart even more. Diana found me crying in her bathroom one night and just held me while I sobbed. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered. "I can't keep fighting." "Yes, you can. You're the strongest person I know." But I did not feel strong. I felt broken. Then, on a Wednesday morning, everything got worse. A process server showed up at Diana's door. I was being sued. Cortec was filing a civil lawsuit against me for $5 million for sabotage, theft, and damages. $5 million. I read the complaint with Helen on a video call, and I felt my stomach drop with every page. They claimed my deliberate system design had caused catastrophic losses. They had expert witnesses who would testify that no competent IT professional would create systems dependent on one person. They were painting me as a saboteur, someone who had intentionally created a single point of failure so I could hold the company hostage. This is a slap suit, Helen said. Strategic lawsuit against public participation. It's designed to intimidate you into silence. They don't actually expect to win $5 million. They want you to give up. It's working, I said quietly. Rosa, we can fight this. How? I don't have money for a defense. If I lose, I'll be financially destroyed forever. I'll be paying this off for the rest of my life. Helen was quiet for a moment. I'll defend you. Same contingency arrangement. Helen, you can't. This is too big. This will take years of your time. I know. But I believe in you. And I believe we can win. I wanted to believe her. But that same afternoon, I got a call that shattered what little composure I had left. My father had had a heart attack. My dad lived in Arizona with my stepmother. We talked every Sunday. He was healthy, active, only 62 years old, and now he was in the ICU. I needed to go to him, but the restraining order complicated everything. If I left the state, I needed to notify the court, and Cortec's lawyers would fight it, claim I was trying to flee. Plus, I had no money for a plane ticket. Diana bought me a ticket. Helen filed an emergency motion to allow me to travel. The court approved it, but not before Cortec's lawyers made us jump through hoops, requiring daily check-ins and a return date within 1 week. I flew to Arizona and spent 5 days in a hospital waiting room while my father recovered from emergency surgery. He was stable, thank God, but it was close. My stepmother, Carol, held my hand and asked about my life. I told her everything. She listened without judgment, and when I finished, she looked at me with so much love and sadness. Baby, you can't give up. Your father raised a fighter. He's fighting right now, in that room. You need to keep fighting too. But when I flew back home to Diana's house, I sat in her bathroom with the door locked and seriously considered just disappearing. Moving somewhere far away, changing my name, starting over where Cortec could never find me. It would be easier than fighting, easier than facing the lawsuit, the blacklisting, the endless struggle. I had hit rock bottom, and I did not know if I had the strength to climb back up. I was at the airport on Sunday evening, about to board my flight back, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. Rosa Martinez? A man's voice. Older, familiar somehow. Yes? This is Gerald Freeman. I was your supervisor at Cortec. I stopped walking, right there in the middle of the terminal. Gerald, my former boss who had retired 8 months ago, the one who had approved all my training courses. Gerald, my voice cracked. I've been trying to reach you. I left messages. I know. I'm sorry. I've been traveling in Europe with my wife. I only got back yesterday and heard what happened. Rosa, I'm furious. I felt tears starting. They're saying you never approved my training courses. That's a lie. I approved every single one. I have the emails, I have the budget reports, I have everything. His voice was hard. And I know exactly what Stephanie is doing because she did it to me too. What do you mean? She pressured me to retire early. She wanted to restructure, cut costs, get rid of expensive senior employees. I took a buyout because I was ready to retire anyway. But she tried to make it look like I was incompetent, that I had mismanaged my department. It's her pattern. My hands were shaking. Gerald, I'm being sued for $5 million. They're claiming I sabotaged the systems. I know. I saw the news coverage. That's why I'm calling. I want to help. I have documentation of everything. All your approvals, your performance reviews, every piece of evidence you need. And I'm willing to testify. I could not breathe. You would do that? Rosa, you were the best employee I ever had. You built something incredible at Cortec. What they're doing to you is criminal. I'm not going to stand by and watch. We talked for another 20 minutes. Gerald had kept meticulous records, thank God. He had emails, budget documents, project files, everything. He also had something else. There were 4 other employees Stephanie forced out before me, he said. Long-term people. She targeted them, made their lives miserable until they quit or took buyouts. I've been in touch with them. They're willing to talk. Why didn't they fight back? Same reason you almost didn't. She's ruthless. She isolates people, destroys their credibility, makes it easier to just walk away. But you didn't walk away, Rosa. You fought. And that gives all of us courage to come forward now. After we hung up, I sat in that airport terminal and cried. But for the first time in weeks, they were tears of relief. I was not alone. I had an ally. Someone who could prove I was telling the truth. I called Helen as soon as I landed. She was ecstatic. This changes everything. With Gerald's testimony and documentation, we can prove Cortex's pattern of behavior. This isn't about you. This is about their systematic targeting of employees. Over the next week, Helen worked like a woman possessed. She met with Gerald, reviewed his documents, and contacted the other former employees. 3 of them agreed to testify. They had their own stories of being pushed out, of being accused of misconduct, of having their reputations destroyed. Helen also did something else. She hired a forensic accountant to review Cortex's financial statements, and that accountant found something interesting. The losses Cortex claims from the system outage don't match their actual financial reports, Helen explained during our meeting. They're inflating the damages, significantly. Why would they do that? Because they need to justify the lawsuit against you. But more than that, I think they're hiding something. I think Cortex is in financial trouble, and I think Stephanie and Brandon are part of the reason why. The forensic accountant dug deeper. What she found was explosive. Cortex had been losing money for over a year. Their profit margins were shrinking. They were hemorrhaging clients. And buried in the financial records were payments to shell companies that the accountant could not verify. I think they're embezzling, the accountant said. I think Stephanie and Brandon have been siphoning money out of the company and trying to cover it up by cutting costs and blaming employees when things go wrong. Helen took this information to the FBI and the state attorney general. An investigation was opened. Federal agents started looking into Cortex's financial practices. The media picked up the story. Local news ran segments about the whistleblower case, about the wrongful termination, about the alleged embezzlement. My name was cleared in the court of public opinion. The other former employees came forward publicly, telling their stories. I felt like I could finally breathe. But Stephanie and Brandon were not done fighting. On a Thursday morning, 3 weeks after Gerald first called me, Helen got a notice. Cortex was filing for bankruptcy. Chapter 11 reorganization. They were trying to shield their assets, to protect themselves from the lawsuits and the investigations. Worse, they filed a motion to hold me in contempt of court. They claimed I had violated the restraining order by coming within 500 feet of their building. Their evidence was security camera footage that appeared to show me walking past Cortex's office. This is impossible, I told Helen. I haven't been anywhere near their building. I've been following the order exactly. Helen reviewed the footage. This is you, Rosa. I looked closer. It was me. My face, my body, my clothes. Walking past Cortex's building at 9:30 at night last Tuesday. I was at home with Diana that night. We watched a movie. She can confirm it. Then this footage is manipulated. But we have 72 hours to prove it, or you could face jail time for contempt. Helen called in a digital forensics expert, a man named Carlos who specialized in video analysis. He worked around the clock, examining the footage frame by frame. I sat in Helen's office, terrified, watching him work. It's deepfake technology, Carlos said finally. Someone used AI to superimpose Rosa's face onto another person's body. It's good work, but it's not perfect. Look here and here. The lighting is inconsistent. The shadows don't match. And the metadata shows the file was created 3 days ago, not on the date it claims to show. Helen filed an emergency response with the court, including Carlos's analysis. The contempt hearing was scheduled for Friday morning. But Helen also presented me with a choice. The FBI wants your help building their case against Stephanie and Brandon. They need someone who understands Cortex systems. who can explain how the money was moved and hidden. But if you help them, you won't have time to focus on your own contempt hearing. We'll have to rely on Carlos's analysis and hope the judge believes it. I looked at Helen, at Diana, who was sitting beside me, at the evidence spread across the conference table. What happens if the judge doesn't believe it? You could go to jail. Not for long, probably just a few days or weeks until we can appeal. But it would be jail. I thought about everything I had been through. The firing, the accusations, the harassment, the lawsuit. I thought about my father recovering in Arizona. I thought about Diana letting me live with her for weeks, supporting me unconditionally. I thought about Gerald and the other employees who had found the courage to come forward. I'll help the FBI, I said. Stephanie and Brandon can't get away with this, even if it means I risk going to jail. Helen nodded. Okay. Then let's go to work. For the next 3 days, I worked with FBI agents, walking them through Cortex financial systems, showing them how money had been moved through fake vendor accounts, how invoices had been fabricated, how the embezzlement had been hidden. It was the same technique they had tried to use against me with the fake training invoices. On Friday morning, I walked into the courthouse for the contempt hearing, exhausted but determined. Cortex lawyers were there, looking confident. Stephanie and Brandon were there too, sitting in the back row. The judge reviewed the evidence. Cortex lawyers presented their footage. Helen presented Carlos's analysis, proving it was fake. The courtroom was silent, as the judge examined both sides. This footage has been digitally manipulated, the judge said finally. The contempt charge is dismissed. Furthermore, I am sanctioning Cortex legal team for presenting fraudulent evidence to this court. This behavior is unacceptable and borders on criminal. I felt relief flood through me, but we were not done. As we left the courthouse, Helen got a call. The FBI was moving. They were arresting Stephanie and Brandon that afternoon. The arrests happened at 2 o'clock that Friday afternoon. Federal agents walked into Cortex offices and took Stephanie and Brandon into custody. The charges were embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The investigation had uncovered over $2 million that they had stolen from the company over 18 months. The news coverage was immediate and intense. Every local station ran the story. The CEO's daughter-in-law and the CEO's son arrested for massive fraud. Cortex stock price crashed. Clients started canceling contracts. Robert, the CEO and Brandon's father, released a statement that evening. He was cooperating fully with the investigation. He had been unaware of what Stephanie and Brandon were doing. He was horrified and apologetic. He also issued a personal apology to me. By Monday morning, Helen had a settlement offer from Cortex. They were dropping the $5 million lawsuit. They were offering me $400,000, a full public apology, and a letter clearing my name of all accusations. It's a good offer, Helen said. Better than we'd get at trial, and it's immediate. I have one condition, I said. Cortex has to settle with all the other employees Stephanie forced out. All of them. Fair settlements, public apologies, everything. Helen called Cortex lawyers. They agreed. 2 weeks later, I signed the settlement agreement. $400,000. After Helen's contingency fee and expenses, I would walk away with $270,000. It was more money than I had ever seen in my life. My bank accounts were restored. My professional reputation was cleared. Multiple companies reached out offering me positions. Senior roles, great salaries, signing bonuses. I turned them all down. Instead, I used part of my settlement money to start my own IT consulting firm. I called it Apex Systems Solutions. My first clients were 3 of Cortex former customers who had been affected by the outage. They remembered how I had built those systems, and they trusted me to help them build better infrastructure. I hired the 3 junior IT technicians from Cortex who had been left scrambling when I was fired. They were good people who deserved better. I paid them well and trained them properly. Gerald came out of retirement to be my business advisor. He did not need the money, but he wanted to help. He said watching me fight back had reminded him why he had loved this industry in the first place. Within 6 months, Apex Systems had 15 clients and 8 employees. We were profitable, growing, and building a reputation for excellent work and ethical practices. I moved out of Diana's house and into my own apartment. Not fancy, but mine. I paid Diana back for everything she had spent helping me, and I took her on a weekend trip to the beach as a thank you. She cried when I gave her the check, and we spent the whole weekend laughing and drinking wine and celebrating. My father recovered fully from his heart attack. I flew out to visit him in Carroll, and we spent a week together. He told me how proud he was of me for fighting, for not giving up, for standing up for myself even when it was terrifying. The trial for Stephanie and Brandon happened 8 months after their arrest. I was called as a witness, and I testified for 3 hours about Cortex Systems, about how they had tried to frame me, about everything I had uncovered. The jury convicted them on all counts. Stephanie was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. Brandon got 3 years. When the verdict was read, I felt no joy, no satisfaction, just relief that it was over. Justice had been served, but I had learned that justice is exhausting and painful and slow. I was sitting in my office one Tuesday afternoon, almost a year after I had been fired, when my phone buzzed with a news alert. The sentencing had been handed down. Stephanie and Brandon were going to prison. I looked around my office. Photos of my team on the wall. My business license in a frame. Client contracts stacked on my desk. My father was visiting next week. Diana was coming over for dinner that weekend. Gerald had just emailed me about a potential new client. I had built something real, something honest, something good. My phone rang. It was a potential client, a mid-sized logistics company looking for someone to overhaul their automation systems. I answered with a smile. "This is Rosa Martinez with Apex Systems. How can I help you?" As I talked through their needs and explained my approach, I thought about everything I had learned. I learned that standing up for yourself is terrifying and costly, but giving up costs even more. I learned that the systems people build to protect themselves can be twisted and used against them if they are not there to explain them. I learned that documentation and allies are everything. I learned that patience and persistence matter more than anything else. Most importantly, I learned that my expertise and my integrity were my greatest assets, and no one could take those away from me. The company that had tried to destroy me had destroyed itself instead. Cortec never recovered. They lost most of their clients, filed for bankruptcy, and eventually were bought out by a competitor. The employees who were left found new jobs. The junior technicians who now worked for me were thriving, and I was free. Free from the fear, free from the harassment, free from the weight of fighting. I had won. Not just in court, but in life. I finished my call with the potential client and made a note to follow up tomorrow. Diana texted asking if I wanted Thai or Mexican for dinner on Saturday. I voted for Thai. As I packed up my laptop for the day, I looked at the photo on my desk. It was me, Diana, and my father at the beach, all of us laughing. That weekend had been perfect. A celebration of everything we had survived together. Sometimes the system that collapses is not the one you built. It is the one built on lies and corruption and cruelty. And when that system falls, the people with real skills and real integrity are the ones left standing, ready to build something better. I turned off the lights in my office and headed home, finally at peace. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where standing up for yourself felt impossible? Where the cost of fighting seemed too high, but the cost of walking away seemed even higher? How did you find the courage to keep going? Share your story in the comments below. I would love to hear how you fought back against injustice in your own life. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and realize they are not alone in their struggles. And if you have not already, subscribe to this channel for more true stories about resilience, justice, and triumph over adversity. Your support means everything. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is fighting their own battle against a system that seems too powerful to overcome. Sometimes knowing that someone else made it through can give you the strength to keep fighting. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here, for caring, for supporting people who refuse to give up. I hope my experience helps you in some way, whether you are facing your own fight or supporting someone who is. Remember, you are stronger than you think. Your expertise, your integrity, and your truth are worth fighting for. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. Until next time, stay strong and keep fighting for what is right.